Thanks for tuning into this presentation. You're about to either watch a video or listen to audio recorded at the Grassroots Radio Conference in 2012 at the Independent Media Center in Urbana-Champaign. Please enjoy.
People with disabilities, and it's really kind of an interesting thing because if you look at any movie, almost any movie about individuals with disabilities, they're played by people without disabilities. So, you know, like you give an example of Forrest Gump, or, you know, when you talk about autism, everybody goes, oh, Rain Man. That's what autism is, Rain Man, you know. So, you know, you're also not only struggling with trying to educate people, but then fighting the perception that, you know, disability is, you know, something that you can classify in this little box. So the other thing that I wanted to dispel were those, you know, people believing certain things about individuals with disabilities. You know, those stereotypes or those things that are not necessarily true, and then turning that into public policy. A really good example that I use is, you know, our state, I don't know how Wisconsin is, I think they're much more advanced than we are here. But in Illinois, services for people with disabilities are very, very isolated. You've got sheltered workshops, you've got day programs, you've got group homes, you've got institutions, either privately run or publicly run. We have over 2,000 people living in Illinois that are living in institutions, just because that's the system that we have in place. Well, if you're making decisions based upon the way that you think things are supposed to be, because that's the way they always have been, then it's really hard to make valid, you know, decisions that are based on the needs of individuals rather than the needs of the system. So, and that also is a very simplistic way of looking at how we serve individuals with disabilities. You know, well, this is how we've always done it, so if we just put more money like that into how we've always done it before, then it'll be fine. The other piece of it is that in our community, oftentimes there is this image that people with disabilities are objects of charity. Not that long ago, there were people with jars standing on the street corner saying, help retarded children. Give us your change, help retarded children, you know. And even the Jerry Lewis Telethon, which is not that old, you know, he just retired, a year ago. And that was totally, you know, send us money so we can help these poor, unfortunate children whose lives are not worth anything. So that's something I wanted to change as well. So these are basically the messages that you would hear in any kind of news program. So you've got, you know, disability is awful, it's a fate worse than death, don't do this because you might get hurt, and then where would you end up? Then you hear the stories about people who have these disabilities, you know, this really horrible, awful thing, and they just did something. You know, they did whatever, they accomplished something, and isn't it amazing because they have a disability and they accomplished something. And then the people who are, it's an inspiration, he's an inspiration to me, and it's, you know, just putting them up on a pedestal and saying, oh, well, you know, they're just a wonderful person because they've done something. And then the message, send money, that's Jerry Lewis, you know, for sure. And the other message you hear is, by God, you better take this medication, you better do this, whatever this is, you know, wear a bike helmet, or, you know, whatever it is so that you don't end up like this person. And I just got really tired of it. So what I have learned from doing this show is that, you know, I've had all this information for a long time about the way the system works and the problems with it. But a lot of people don't know that all of that exists. They know, because they don't have a lot of connection with people with disabilities. People with disabilities have been isolated for so long in Illinois. So you've got people living in group homes. You've got people living in institutions. You've got people working in sheltered workshops. Very, very seldom do they have any interaction with those in the general population. And so, and it even goes back to, to living situations too. Here's a picture of a group home there. And then Jacksonville Developmental Center, which is that we have 8 big institutions in Illinois that are publicly funded. And now the governor has finally made the decision to close those institutions. It's a challenge, and he's going to have to do them one at a time. But I've been very involved in the closure of this first state-operated developmental center that's going down, and it's this huge battle because people think, well, this is the way we've always done it, so this is the way we have to. You look at that, for somebody in an institution like that, it costs $200,000 per person to maintain them living in an institution. Well, you could support them living in the community for not even half of that, with 24-hour-a-day support. But people don't look at that. They look at this is a union job. We need to maintain our union jobs. Therefore, these people need to continue living here, and we do the best thing for them. Well, not necessarily. So that's kind of the end that I'm on with that. It also starts, in my mind, it starts in public school. Kids in special education, and they're isolated in classrooms away from their peers that don't have disabilities. And so what is that teaching them? What's it teaching with the other children at school? What's it teaching their parents? I think it's all connected, that as a kid with a disability, you don't believe you belong with others. As kids without disabilities, you see those kids in the special education classroom and say they're not good enough to be out here with us. They're not smart enough, they're not, whatever it is. The other thing it does is it prepares parents to believe that. So if you have a kid with a disability and they're in a special education classroom all the time, what that's doing, it's preparing you to believe that's the only thing possible once they're out of school. And so you're learning that sheltered work and group home, that's the only choice for your family member. So isolation is a big problem. The other thing that people don't understand is that people with disabilities, especially developmental disabilities, do not work unless it's in a workshop for sub-minimum wage. And so I think, I've been reading these employment reports coming out of Washington, D.C. The employment report said that the unemployment rate for individuals with disabilities is like 16%, which is much higher than the regular unemployment rate. But what they don't talk about is that doesn't include anybody who lives in an institution, doesn't include anybody who's never held a job before. And so in reality, I think I read somewhere that they project that the real unemployment rate for people with disabilities is more like in the neighborhood of 80%.
Now, is that national?
Yeah. So, people just aren't aware of the degree of the problem with this. And of course, if you're not working, if you're not earning a living, then you're depending on state support to keep you going. You're depending on SSI. You're depending on, benefits from Medicaid. All of those things play into the plight of individuals with disabilities. But, having a job is a big part of being a real person. So something also that I talk a lot about. And then the third piece of it is, and I mentioned this earlier, people with disabilities don't have those relationships in the community because for the most part they're not there. They might know their family, but they don't belong to community organizations. They oftentimes don't have access to transportation, so they can't drive to get places, do things with friends and other folks. So that's an issue as well. So those are kind of the three things, the three big concepts that I address within my radio program. Kind of mentioned this, people with disabilities live in poverty. You have to have less than $2,000 in money assets in your name to qualify for SSI. You know that, you're a benefits counselor, so that's, yeah, clear. I heard they're trying to change that, trying to raise it to $5,000 at the federal level, but there's been nothing since, so I don't know about that. So that's the station I do my show at. It's an hour. It started out as an hour on Saturday morning, and it was at 7 o'clock in the morning, so I would have to get up at 4:30 to get to the station, get all set up and so forth, and do my show. I do national, state, and local news, whatever has happened that week, and I have a couple of sources that I use for the news. Recently it's been a website called Inclusion Express, and then I also have been using Disability Scoop, which has a lot of news stories related to all types of disability issues. And then I have also connections within the state who send me stories here and there. So it's been pretty easy. I just spend, half an hour a week typing up a script, and then I'll take it in for my show and just read the news. And that's always the first part of the program. And then when I first started doing the show, I would be able, since I had a full hour, I was able to do a whole really in-depth interview. So I'd have a person either in the studio or on the phone, and it was pretty much, I'd have a list of questions and just have them do the talking. And it was anything, I've got 5 years worth of programs on my website, so just anything you can imagine. And then also have some music in there too as well, but listener participation. So I'd have people could call in and ask questions. Now, you wouldn't think that on a Saturday morning at 7 o'clock, there'd be a whole lot of that going on. But I did have a couple of really dedicated listeners who, actually one couple that I know who both have CP, and they're a married couple, and they would set their clock radio for 7 o'clock on Saturday morning, turn on the radio, listen to my show. She would always call in and ask a question, because she felt bad that nobody ever got it. But see, when she started calling, then it kind of plants the seed for other people, and then they will too. So it was actually kind of fun. And so that went on. I did that for a couple of years. And then the opportunity came to move to a more popular time for people to listen to the radio. So I moved to, are you here to listen to this session? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that she was the only one.
No, I thought you were having a chat.
No, pull up a chair. We're making it very informal today, so that's all right.
With accessibility. So it's kind of a big one for us.
You're what?
We're from Nova Scotia with Accessible Media. That's the name of the organization that we're representing. So.
Accessible for whom?
Accessible for people with disabilities. However they define their disability. So we started out in 1990 as a charitable organization called Voice Print. And the concept was there was a report released that stated that 10% of Canadians could not read their daily newspaper. Whether that's vision impairment, low literacy, learning disabilities, ESL, certain physical disabilities prevented them from reading their daily paper. So we became an audio newsstand. so people could tune in and listen to the stories that were printed in the paper verbatim.
Oh,
That was
okay.
how we got our start.
So you're just reading newspapers
That
on
was
air.
how it started, yeah. We have evolved over the intervening 22 years. We are now a national television network and a national audio service. We still provide in-depth news coverage, but we also do original programming, a lot of it focused on disability issues. On the television side of things, all of our programming is either is described video and closed captioned, and we're, our mandate is making all media accessible to all Canadians, and it's a work in progress, obviously, but this this workshop definitely spoke to me.
Sure,
spoke to us.
absolutely. Wow. Well, my program has less to do with accessibility and more to do with social justice. So I approach disability issues from that perspective, about social justice, community inclusion, and part of it is bringing resources to people with disabilities, because I've done this program for 5 years now and built up a pretty solid group of people who are interested in those kinds of things. The other part of what I do is that because it's community radio, and there are a lot of people who follow community radio just because they like the station, they'll listen. And there's another whole audience there that's learning about disability issues that they had no idea that even existed before that. And so when we were talking about the isolation of, group homes and sheltered workshops and all that business, there are people out there who hear this and say, I never knew there were issues. I thought that the state would just take care of people with disabilities and that, we didn't have to be concerned about that. But, when you really get to understand the issues, then you really know that's not the case. And there are a lot of people who are sitting at home watching TV or doing nothing at all because they have no other opportunities. And so I feel that I have a very great opportunity to do education in that way. I've been doing the show now for 5 years. I'm a parent. I have a daughter with Down syndrome, and so she is my inspiration for doing this, but I also have had a lot of experience over the years just being in the disability community and getting to understand all the issues and so forth that are, need to be dealt with in that area. So, as I said, I've been doing my show for about 5 years, and it started out on a Saturday morning at 7 a.m. for an hour, and once I got a better opportunity for a better time slot, then I moved to Wednesday, 5:30 to 6, which is during drive time, so that's perfect. A lot of people listening then. And then even more recently moved to Monday, but still at that 5:30 to 6 p.m. time slot. WEFT, which is, they do live web stream, and I also record my show and put it on the website. So it's podcast as well, which has been a really good thing. It has been a wonderful opportunity. It was really interesting. This morning, were you in the session this morning about community outreach and so forth?
Yeah.
And I was sitting there thinking, our station doesn't do a lot of community outreach, but I think my show is a really good example of that, because I'm bringing people. My show is totally interview. I do news at the beginning, but the rest of the show is I'll bring a person in and interview them. So it could be an individual with a disability talking about their life and the things that are important to them. It could be somebody coming in talking about a parent support organization or some other organization. It could be disability specific. I've had people come in and talk about name a disability, autism, whatever. They'll come in and talk about the disability and what people need to know about it. And my message, is, I could focus just on the community that we live in, but really, the people in our community are not very knowledgeable about what's available more globally. They really are kind of set in their way of thinking that the way it's been for years is the way it ought to remain. And so I look at my program as a way of bringing them, into a more progressive kind of, attitude about disability and providing more information about how it could be better for people. So I have interviews, as I said, every week I have an interview, bring in a different person to talk about whatever it is that they offer, that they're interested in, and but I don't have time anymore for the call-in. When I had an hour-long program, I could have people call in and ask questions and so forth. I really can't do that anymore.
Do you have any idea what your reach is in terms of number of listeners who know? This is something that we've certainly been dealing with from day one. We don't know if we're reaching our audience.
We don't know how to
quantify
the numbers that we're reaching.
Do you have a website?
We do.
We can count hits, but in the beginning, the program images were actually counted as hits to the site because we were uploading our programs to the site, so we would be on the site, but that's a hit, but it's an employee hit.
Yeah,
So
I don't look at hits.
No.
I look at unique, unique visitors.
Right.
Because I can go on the site, 20 times,
That's what the problem
but I'm only going to count. It's only going to count as one for a unique visitor.
Right.
Yeah.
So that helps a little bit. We don't do any kind of, we don't count listeners. That's an expensive service that you can pay for.
Absolutely. It's the same in Canada.
And for community radio, it's really not the point. We really don't care how many listeners there are as long as we're serving communities that have been, traditionally unserved.
I guess the question is, technological advances becoming a lot more available to our first demographic, which is vision impaired, so they have, shark software that will read the
Jaws.
papers and all that stuff. The question is, are we current enough for people who are getting technology they need to help them access media? Are we helping, or are we just providing a service into the ether and patting ourselves on the back and not really helping?
Yeah, and trying to assess that has got to be a challenge.
Which is why,
right?
do you do any direct outreach for your show? Like, do you contact, Autism Society of Southern Illinois and say, hey, could you get this information about this show out to your client base?
I don't do that specifically, but because I do an interview show, so say I have a guy on who's talking about his organization that finds jobs for people with disabilities. He will, more than likely, post that interview to his website, send it out to all the people he knows and say, hey, I was on this radio show and we talked about employment. And so that brings in, it's kind of a progressive thing, but every time you do an interview and you bring somebody else in from some other realm of disability services, you're expanding that little bit more. And so, and you may suggest to them that they, I have no problem with you posting this information on your website, and the link to my radio show has been posted on a number of websites. But as far as doing specific outreach, I don't, because this is a volunteer thing for me. So, I have my full-time paid job, and I'm lucky to get my podcast posted on the website. So I'm about 2 weeks behind right now. But it's always a challenge. Now I have figured, generally I have about, for the website I have about 300 unique visitors every month. There is a class at the University of Illinois that a couple of professors assign the students to listen to a couple of my programs and then report back as an assignment. And so I always know when that assignment is given because the website says, shoot up, And, sometimes I'll have a nationally known speaker on the show, and it spikes when you have somebody who's a well-known person. But I do know that if I search on disability radio, if I Google that, my show is the #1 thing that comes up. There's another program that originates in Afghanistan that comes up. There's another one that originates in, where is the other one? Ireland, maybe?
There's one in Montreal, KUT. I met the producer of that.
What's that show called?
I'm trying to remember now. I'm drawing a blank. I may still have his card around.
Oh, I'd really.
If I could get onto my email, I would.
I'd be really interested to hear it because it's not a common thing, for sure. There are some podcasts. There's some podcasts going on, but it's not something that mainstream media is going to pick up. There aren't enough people it impacts.
It does surprise me about how. I mean, you can see a commonality through a lot of community radio, or in Canada, campus-based community radio, where no matter where you go, you will see certain shows that target a certain demographic. I mean, every community station has a show about LGBTQ, and that's fantastic. And every station will have a third language program, a Latino cultural program, and yet, the disability demographic, which is arguably larger than
any of them, maybe not any.
Does not seem to have a voice.
It really doesn't. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the interesting thing is, even when I proposed this session for this conference, they said, well, you're going to talk about accessibility. So like, ADA accessibility standards, and, so we're talking about grab bars and wide doorways and ramps. No, I said, I really don't. That's not what I might have a show where that is a topic of discussion.
But what about, your interview with, what's her name, Sarah? No. About, incorporating your sexuality into your disability and how that affects your sex life. That kind of stuff.
Fascinating topic.
I'm proud of that. I was proud of that.
Yeah, you should be.
Who doesn't want to get it on, right? It doesn't matter. Which leg you're using, or whether your eyes work or anything. It's not about that. Not to be crass, but that's an issue of interest.
Sure.
But,
absolutely. Yeah.
I will.
Some of the early programs, I don't think they're still running on AMI
If you
now.
go to our website, you will find a lot of our programming. Again, we do a lot of original content as well. You will find a lot of programming that deals with different disability issues. You are welcome to take, if you contact me and say, I would like to use a portion of your interview with so and so. The interview I did with the Japanese gentleman who's learning echolocation. He's blind and is learning to navigate, rather than with a cane, through a series of clicks, his tongue.
He's a photographer before he lost his sight,
and he's a blind photographer.
And he's still a photographer now, so he's...
Seriously?
Great
awesome.
interview. If you want to use clips of things like that, please contact me and they're yours.
Oh, fabulous. Well,
I'm sorry,
Do you have an extra card?
And hi, Sarah, by the way.
now I don't have business cards for my radio show, but I do have my other cards, and what I'll do is I'll just put my website.
You guys must be in Canada, but I'm a disability benefit specialist in Wisconsin.
Oh, all right.
So that was my interest. Both my husband's involved in community radio, but I'm kind of along for the ride.
The same.
So this is mine.
Okay.
And the same here. I mean, you're welcome to use whatever that you find interesting there as well.
We were in the same bed.
So, out of curiosity, do you do anything to maybe mentor people with disabilities to get on the airwaves?
I have. I'm not currently. I did mentor a young man with autism who was very interested in, doing radio. And so I went through, and I actually happened to be the air shifter trainer at the station. So I do trainings on a regular basis for new folks anyway. But he was going to need some additional support, and so I said, hey, come in on Saturday mornings, and we trained in the back studio, so not in the production studio, and he just got to go over it and over it and over it. And he actually made some recordings, recorded some shows that he put together. Because of his autism, he was very limited in what he was willing to put on the air in his show. So he would do only Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd is what he did. Of course, Pink Floyd is, so he would come in on Saturday morning, he'd record half an hour of Pink Floyd, we'd record it, I'd put it on my website, he'd go home and show everybody his show that he had done, but he never actually got on the air because we came to the conclusion that he wasn't going to be able to do it without support. So,
well, this is a new element that, it's always an element. I mean, a lot of the staff for AMI across the country have all sorts of different abilities or disabilities, but now we're incorporating this original content and video content, specifically trying to get our volunteers and members of the community that have disabilities to be our street reporters with very little training or lots, depending. And so they'll cover things like we just had the tall ships come through Halifax a few weeks back, or a couple of weeks back, and sent a videographer from one province and an interviewer from another, and another girl from another part of the province who was pretty much non-sighted at all, and sent them out on the waterfront all day so that they're not only accessing the content but producing it.
Yeah, excellent.
As well, right? So all those aspects are at play, really important.
Yeah. So your studio, is it accessible for, so that people can, use the equipment who are blind, say, or is that not?
Depending on the individual. Like Lou used our studios in New Brunswick. We had a guy. Well, we had a woman who was volunteer reading with us. And her husband, who was completely blind, got laid off from the government. She's like, he really wants to do something and he wants to be involved. And I'm like, well, it's difficult, I can't have him read the paper or whatever, but we'll figure something out, right? And so he brought his software to my office, JAWS, which I'd never used or heard of before.
I've heard of JAWS.
Stuck it into the PC, and I had him uploading all the programming that was produced that day, and it saved me 2 hours, and he would bring his guide dog in, and the volunteers would get to meet the guide dog, and perhaps they've never interacted before, so that's a direct connection for him to explain, to pat the dog, and for him to take 2 hours off of my day. So it wasn't a simply volunteer thing. It wasn't about that.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't have done it if it were just a lip service, assistance. But as far as the actual recording,
a lot of our senior producers in Toronto, we have bureaus from Halifax all the way out to Victoria, so from one end of the country to the other. Most of our senior producers in Toronto, who are the people who take what the volunteers have recorded and they clean it up. They edit it. They're all 100%. And we use a special editing suite called Studio Recorder, which was developed in collaboration with, I'm trying to remember the name of the organization, but it's the U.S. equivalent to the CNIB, like the American Association for the Blind.
Okay.
Right. It was developed in conjunction with them, and it's designed to be used only with the computer keyboard, as opposed to having to use a mouse.
Which makes
Right.
sense.
So
Yeah,
you put
yeah.
tactile the tabs on whatever buttons. you
Sure.
need.
So it's like brailled kind of a
Basically,
thing. Yeah.
and it's great. I mean, they've been with us for 20 years. And they turn out great programs.
Excellent.
So we're pretty proud of that. But what we're really proud of right now is getting these people in front of the camera. Because I think it's awesome that over the last 20 years or so in all media, you've seen a push to be more inclusive of visible minorities. So you turn on CNN and you'll see an African American reporter, and you'll see a South Asian American reporter, but you still don't see a reporter in a wheelchair or a reporter
That's right.
who's vision impaired. So we want to be the standard there. And what I said, we had meetings in Toronto earlier this week, and I said that my happiest day will be when one of the big networks poaches one of our reporters.
Yeah.
This is like, okay, Kelly McDonald, you're completely blind, but we want you on CTV. That's going to be the happiest day for us.
Yeah.
Because there will be another barrier that
That's right.
will partially take it
Yeah.
down.
Excellent. Wow. Now, do you in your programs transcript them?
We're starting to transcript our original programming. We don't transcript any of the news stories that we.
You're just the stuff that you read from the newspaper. You don't, but they.
Daily,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
Are they
yeah.
still archiving everything on the sites?
Yeah.
So you
We're in a position of really revamping our website to make it still more accessible. Currently, it's not as good as it should be. For a long time, how do I put this? I think for a long time the organization tended to look inward, and it's really just been in the last few years where we're really recognizing the changes in technology. We're changing our assumptions about people with disabilities, and we are, again, our old motto was, making newspapers available for the blind. Very simple and straightforward.
Yeah.
Now it's making all media accessible to all Canadians. Right. So
Right.
we will be, our plan is, our 3-year plan is at the end of 3 years, however you want your programming. If you're, if you're deaf and you want it signed to you, you will be able to do that. If you are vision impaired and you want described video, you can have that. If you want a closed caption, you can have that. If you want an app for your smartphone, you can have that.
If you're
Wow.
only
So you're
interested in
well
sending-
beyond just radio then.
Oh, yeah.
You are
Yeah.
doing
I mean,
lots of stuff.
Yeah. My background is in radio. This just seemed like a heck of a challenge, anyways.
I would think so. Absolutely. Well, I'm very excited to meet both of you and to make that connection because they're just there aren't many of us out there doing that kind of stuff. So
Another person you might want to get in touch with is one of our senior producers in Toronto, Paul Daniel.
Oh,
I can write
This
that down for you.
yeah. Paul.
Paul is the senior producer for a show that we do called Contact. And it is our Sunday evening interview show. And again, much like your show, it deals with different aspects of disability, almost exclusively. Although sometimes he'll delve into something more esoteric.
Yeah.
But he's a great resource. He's been doing this program for us for many years, and again, he could probably provide you with plenty of material. You know, if you find that you have a last minute cancellation, which I'm sure happens.
I'm sure
you
he'd
can-
love to. Yeah, exactly.
You know,
I
it's
wanna
like, oh
interview
well,
you.
we're
He's
going.
gonna love
We're
you.
going to.
So-
We'll interview each other.
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking. I think, yeah.
Is it Daniel or Daniel?
Daniel, call Daniel. Yeah. An excellent guy and a great sense of humor, sharp as a tack, and a long history of experience, you know. And just a super positive guy. You know, amazing.
Excellent. Yeah, I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah. But give yourself a half an hour because you're going to be on the phone a long time.
That's okay. I don't mind that.
And Heather, where are you based in?
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. I don't know where.
Yeah, Prairie du Chien. La Crosse is one of the larger cities, I guess, in the
Okay.
You know where that is.
I've been to La Crosse.
Okay.
And so your clientele, I guess, we come from all different sectors, like people who have been born with disabilities and people who
Any
have
type
gotten-
of disabilities, or even if they're trying to get on disability.
Yeah, that's all kinds of
Wide
stuff.
range.
Yeah.
Yep, and I work with adults ages 18 to 59, and I look at what benefits they're entitled to, and if they have troubles with accessing them.
A really in-demand person. I know those folks are in Illinois for sure.
Now, are you privately funded or government funded?
It's through the county, so it's
Through the county, okay.
Yeah, we have in Wisconsin. They have aging and disability resource centers in most of the counties now, and they're required then to have a benefit specialist for the elders and then also for people with disabilities. So,
Is that something that?
I believe Wisconsin's one of the only states that
So I was
has the
going to. I
disability
was going to
benefit
say, like,
specialist.
that's
We don't
very
have,
progressive.
in some ways.
You know.
I need to ask you because the thing that I do for my real job is I'm the executive director of an organization called the Illinois Association of Microboards and Cooperatives. Are you familiar with microboards and cooperatives? I thought you might be because that's where the concept originated, was up in Canada. And I understand that there are quite a few up there and have been going strong for many years. So we're trying to replicate that model down here. And that's another thing that people in Illinois and even nationally, they don't get that whole concept because they're so used to those isolated, group home type arrangements. So very interesting.
So is this your first GRC?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Is it your first? Okay.
I'm an old hand at these.
I went last year to the one in Kansas City. That was my first one.
Yeah.
But what a great group of people. Like, even though I'm not involved with radio right now, I'll go back,
Yeah,
know.
we are.
Just
Yeah.
Good people.
Yeah. No, not yet, Heather.
Huh?
Not yet. You're not. Yeah.
get back
She's.
into it.
I
I
started
wasn't-
like she did. Her husband is into radio, and involved with community radio up in Wisconsin. That's the way I started too. My husband got hooked on community radio when we moved to the area here.
Got the bug.
Yeah, and he, I found this station. It's really weird. I love it.
That's usually
And
how
so,
it starts.
exactly right. He got hooked, and he got on the board of directors, and so.
That's the question.
Yeah, what is that? That's right. And as I tell people, I said, there are some things on our station that I absolutely despise.
Oh, I know.
But I am so glad that they have the opportunity to do it. Because nowhere else will you find anything like the crap that they play on Exactly right, yeah.
Yeah, you need a good sense of humor.
Yeah, so I started out just being, on the fringes and stuffing envelopes and helping with pledge drive and, all those little things that need to be done. And finally, after about 20 years of doing that, I said, I could have a show. I can do this.
Yeah, you could.
And I did. And it's been great. I love it. gets to be a little bit challenging doing the every week commitment. But
Does anybody work on the show with you? Do you have like another producer, or
nope,
just
it's
you?
all me.
Do you do your own editing then too?
I
Or you're
do
live?
it's live for the most part. I do record the program, and then so sometimes, well, I have to do a little bit of editing there just to make it, because I'll have whatever comes before and whatever comes after, I catch a little bit of that, so I have to edit that out. And sometimes I will record interviews on the phone that people, or in person, if people can't make it to my show. So then I will edit the interview and, put all that together. So I have done some. So I went into the session here where they were doing with Audacity. And,
Yeah, I saw you in the corner there. I was in that as well.
yeah. I didn't stay to do the practice because I didn't think I was going to have time to really accomplish anything.
I only
but
got 2 files deep out of 3 and then ran out of time. But I flirted with Audacity early on, but then was introduced to Studio Recorder through AMI and then moved on to SoundForge,
Which we're now getting rid of.
which is now going. But when we get home, we're going to be diving back into that.
into Audacity.
We're looking to produce some audio doc content just on the side for ourselves about different issues in our neighborhood, and so I'm trying to brush up on that and layering music and sound and everything, getting good interviews with just a Zoom recorder and that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, that looked really attractive to be able to do that. The layering is, I'm gonna play with it as well, because I have a little recording program, but it's, what you put on at first, that's all you get, is that those, a stereo track, and that's it.
It's fun to be able to play. I like to be able to on Audacity where you can see the sound. I'm like, that is so cool.
Oh yeah. Well, I can see the sound on my program. I just can't do much with it.
What program are you using?
It's just a real cheap little Roxio music producer program. Yeah. So,
it is fun. And
Well,
when Carlos was
bear in
writing
mind too that Audacity is free.
I know.
You can download it. It's not a particularly large program, so you can drop it on your desktop, on your laptop, or your hard drive, and you can just fiddle with it, have fun with it.
Yeah.
Play around, see what happens when you
do this.
highlight this and click that effect and see what happens.
Yeah. That's what I need to do, and it's the issue for me is finding the time to do it. It's so much easier. I know a music producer, I can just do it, but I would like to redo my show intro and outro, because what I did when I recorded that was I was in the studio playing the music and talking and trying to control the volume, but with Audacity I wouldn't have to do that. I could record the music, record my voice, and then put the two together and mix it so that it fits. Who knew that could happen? I didn't. Yeah, see, so coming to this, I'm thinking, wow, it was worth it for that alone.
That was great.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. But I was,
Back when I first started in radio, we did all of that, but we did it all with reel-to-reel tape. And razor blades and wax crayons.
back in the day, yeah. And record albums.
We still buy
We still play them.
My husband has a large collection of record albums, yes. Yeah.
They have a just vinyl show at WDRT, so it's records during that time period. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And it's a hard
that's
one to do
fun.
with just one person, though. I don't know how radio DJs did it before, but they always like to have 2 people there. It's harder than doing a CD.
Well, we had a turntable in our studio until probably about 5 years ago. But we'd get, there's so many different people that come in that the turntable would end up being abused by a turntablist.
Oh yeah.
And the cartridge would be destroyed, and then there you go. It just wasn't worth it anymore, so they took it out. So the people who use records for the source of their music, what they do is they'll just record it at home and bring it in on a CD.
Where is WEFT?
In Champaign. It's about, let's see, where are we? We are The front of the building is out here. If you go out to Springfield, or out to University Avenue and go about 2 or 3 miles to downtown Champaign. It's on Market Street in Champaign, right down by the bus station.
Oh, okay, yeah. We were down there yesterday.
Yeah.
We like to drop by stations sometimes when we're in different towns and just show up at community stations.
That's
Like,
fun.
Yeah.
look around.
Yeah.
You know, we did it in New Orleans.
Can we buy a t-shirt?
Can we put that piano in there?
It's a pretty rough operation. It's not slick like some places, but it's just a big room full of CDs and a couple of studios, and that's it. Yeah. Yeah, it's fun.
We should see about getting on the air here.
Yeah, are they having any tours going? Taking anybody down?
I think it's
there
just
to
sort of an
conversation?
ongoing thing. 'Cause
Drop
the station's
in.
right there, so
Yeah.
you just speak with, is it Christine?
First one?
No, Christine.
Yeah. Well, they said that there was an invitation to stop in and be interviewed.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they're going to be on the air doing this all weekend
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, sure. A few weeks back on, what holiday was it that we brought Amelia into CKDU? Our daughter,
It was
6.
a holiday. It was
She
just
did
the
the
weekend.
Greg Family Singers Hour. that was fun.
Oh yeah. Keep it in the family. Get her obsessed with radio now,
Sure.
and she loves it. She's always asking to go back. We do another Saturday afternoon up at CKDU.
Oh hell, when the first good barbecue joint opened in Halifax, we were there with a recorder and a mic and headphones and had her in the room.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I have 4 kids and they've all done something on the radio.
Yep.
With the little, last year we had a Santa Claus sighting in summer. We went to the Chinese restaurant and this guy comes in all, he had shorts and a red shirt and stuff on, but he must be a Santa, play Santa in the
Right.
winter. And his license plate even said Santa C on it. And they were just like, it's Santa. And then after, when he goes to leave, he winks at him and he gives him a card that says Santa caught you being good with his picture on it. So I did a radio show with the girls and I interviewed them. I'm like, oh, so you saw we had an unusual sighting with Santa in the
That's
summer.
amazing.
And they just love hearing it. They were a little embarrassed at first, because when you first hear your own voice, you're
Yes.
like,
Oh, well, yes.
it's
yes.
not
Like
me.
that for
Just
me.
erase
I
it.
don't want to,
Yeah.
If I have to edit my own show, I'm just like, oh, I can't listen to this, but I have to get through it. I don't know what that is. I want to be on the air.
Yeah,
I enjoy it.
everyone
I don't
everyone is
listening
like,
to
there you
Come
get
back.
over it.
It's awkward.
But then we saw the same car. Just a couple weeks ago, we saw the Santa C car again. I'm like, oh, we should do a part 2.
Yeah, the ongoing coverage.
Yeah. It's always in the summer. But it's good to get them involved. And they're not scared of them probably, because most adults like, oh my God, I'd never be on the radio. What is that radio all about?
Well, I have people that come on my show that say, I'm so nervous. I've never been on the radio. But I said, trust me, nobody is listening to this show. It's you and me having a conversation into these microphones. Don't worry about it. And
I found that definitely helpful with voice print, which
AMI.
turned into AMI when I was doing interviews. It's never live, right? And so people would come in and be quite nervous about getting interviewed about intimate issues. But as soon as they realized that literally there was no one listening because this wasn't going to air for another 2 weeks, I'm going to make you something amazing. And say, I'm going to dress this right up.
You're going to take out all the ums and ahs. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Start smacking your lips. I can edit that out too.
You can handle it.
my toughest editing experience was once I did a series of shows on people with mental illness. And I had a woman talking about her teenage son who had bipolar disorder. And she says, I don't want to use his name. And this is back when my show was an hour long. So really early on. And she says, my son's name is Troy, but in the interview, I'm going to call him Adam. Okay, all right, fine. So she did her interview, and every once in a while she'd say Troy, and I'd stop. And I said, well, I'll give you a signal. When you use the wrong name, I'll stop and point to my chin or something like that. And so she'd stop and then say the sentence again using the correct name. Well, what I discovered after recording this 40-minute interview is that I missed a whole bunch of times that she used the wrong name. So I clipped out where, just the name, the fake
boy.
name, and then I
Cut and
had to
paste.
edit it in to each of those places.
Wow.
That took for freaking ever to do. But I agreed to. That's my daughter with Down syndrome. There she is. That's Annie right there, and she's calling me. Hello. Are you done with work? Okay. Why are you calling me?
Can you see your schedule for a minute?
Are you at work? What, Angie didn't come get you? You don't know? Did she come get you? No? Okay, well, you get the day off then. I'll see you in a little bit, okay?
I heard.
Okay? I'll call Angie and see where she is, all right?
I was going to do.
All right, bye-bye. Her assistant didn't come pick her up for work.
No.
Are you on the go then?
I don't know, we'll see.
Yeah, I was looking at this one for Dale. Yeah, I wasn't sure where this was. This one seems to be.
Yeah. 4-1 production. Okay, so that's back in there again, right? Back in the sweatbox.
Back in the sweatshop. Where are you going?
So there's another
Speaking of
session
doing that
after
one,
this
there
with a
is.
men dinner.
Then you're free for dinner, and
Then
then
you're free
the
for dinner and then the
keynote.
keynote. I can't do the keynote tonight. We have other commitments. I have to leave after this one, actually.
Are you back in and around tomorrow?
I'll be back tomorrow. Yeah, I'm coming in the morning tomorrow. But I can't do all day. My son is coming home this weekend, so, it's been probably 2 months since we've seen him, so I don't want to miss. He'll sleep in tomorrow morning, so I'll be okay coming in the morning.
So you said you had a website for your show?
I do. It's disabilitybeat.com, and then it's also on Facebook, and I actually had a friend help me do something to the website, but it still needs a lot of work because I've got 5 years worth of podcasts on it, and all of a sudden, like all the links of stuff that happened prior to this year, like all of a sudden just quit working. So now I have to go back in and fix all of that, but that's going to take some time. So, and I'm not a website person, so it's like I've got a gazillion things on that homepage, and I can't figure out how to archive stuff. So it goes on forever.
Yeah. Shall we get another coffee or something before we get to the next session?
Yeah, what's the caucus thing about anyway?
Well, there are different caucuses, but it's
okay.
usually it's very specific. It's either specific groups within community radio, so it's like a person of color, for example. So they just want to get together more than it's. They'll set up a caucus when the issues cannot be adequately dealt with in one session.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
Take over the course of
Yeah.
days.
Yeah.
How old are your kids?
Old now. Let's see, Annie's 29. She's the oldest, and then I've got my son is 27, and my youngest daughter is 23. So nobody at home anymore. Edging up on becoming empty nesters. My daughter Annie, who is my one with a disability, is we're looking into getting her own place, an apartment or a small house or something, so she can be on her own because she needs to be. So, okay. I just texted her assistant. I said, "Are you taking Annie to work today?" And she goes, "Oh my God, I totally forgot." She does this every day. How can she totally forget? I don't know.
Well, it was very good to meet the two of you.
Yes, it was nice.
Please keep in touch. And again, you know, we have a lot of content that
How
we
long
would.
have you been doing your show now? Or
Well-
your station, you've evolved over time, but how long have you been doing like disability issues kind of
Well,
stuff?
from day one. I mean, that's really been.
Organization is really focused on that.
Oh,
That's
okay.
the core
Yeah.
of the whole organization.
Yeah.
Everything springs from that.
Uh-huh.
So 22 years.
Yeah. We have, again, our website's going through some rebuild right now. So our full archives are not available online, but there are some archives. But look into something like Making Contact. The interview
Absolutely,
program.
I will.
And
Is
you know,
that
even-
something that you like syndicate any of your programming at all?
Not officially, no. But we have some. We do have some community stations in Canada that rebroadcast some of our programs, and it's certainly something that we're amenable to. I mean, we're not a commercial venture. We're a not-for-profit.
Right.
So, yeah, our reason for existing is to get the information out there. So if somebody wants to rebroadcast some of our shows, or even, you know, I think if I can't speak for Paul, but I would presume that if you contact him and say, "Hey, you did this great interview, you know, with this doctor. I would love to use that interview on my program here in Illinois." I'm sure he would say, as long as you credit me and Accessible Media,
Sure.
we wouldn't have any problems. Right? I mean,
Yeah.
again, we're not making a profit off the content,
Right.
so why not?
Why not share it?
Well,
That's what
kind of what we're all
yeah.
about, you
Yeah,
know.
that's right. That's right.
So,
Making it
yeah.
available.
Yeah. Or, you know, you may come across somebody interesting that he's interviewed that might give you an opportunity to say, "Hey, maybe I should interview that doctor."
Uh-huh.
We can get you the contact.
Sure. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
You've got another guest.
Yeah, sounds good.
Absolutely. We're all on the same boat.
Yeah.
Let's go get some coffee.
Very good. Enjoy. It was really nice meeting you. I'll see you again tomorrow. And thanks for coming to sit with me, Heather.
Well, there's still some time before the next session. I think. Was there more to what you had for your
You know, what I
presentation there, or is that
had,
about
actually the
just-
presentation is available on that Radio Spark.
Oh, okay.
And then there were a couple pieces that I put up on ADA accessibility and principles of universal design, because they asked me specifically when I proposed the presentation. They said, "We'll do something on accessibility."
Yes.
Okay, fine. I'll tack
There's
that
a
on.
lot on that, though. I mean, you know, what you're
It
doing,
really
there's not a
is.
lot. You know,
How
so
long
you're
does the
doing-
bathroom grab bar have to be? Really, I don't care.
People can find that information pretty easily, too. You know, that's...
Yeah.
I'm going to leave myself in case I have so much.
Yeah.
We will see you shortly.
Okay, take care.
You've been watching or listening to a presentation recorded at the Grassroots Radio Conference 2012 at the Indie Media Center in Urbana, Champaign. Thanks.